As someone who's interested in primary care, I'm told all the time that an equal part gratifying and terrifying thing about the field is its breadth. What are you supposed to prioritize when a patient has comorbidities? What's your scope? Do you know that you'll only have 15 minutes per patient? Yet despite all these potential challenges, one experience taught me that sometimes expanding your scope, going off script, and maximizing your time is where change happens and where trust grows. During my third year of medical school, I spent some time in a geriatric primary care clinic, and one patient, who we can call for the sake of the story Miss Marshall, was a woman in her 80s who's being seen for a routine checkup. Together, she and the attending physician discussed her hypertension, her diabetes, her cholesterol, and then the conversation approached mental well-being, and the attending inquired about her mood. Miss Marshall looked momentarily taken aback before saying, "Actually, I just feel so anxious all the time. I worry about everything. It's constant, and I don't feel myself." The attending paused her documentation to turn to the patient. "Tell me more." Miss Marshall went on to reveal that lately she'd been worrying about her children and grandchildren more than usual for no apparent reason. She felt like she was the caretaker of the family and owed them her undivided attention at all times. "It sounds like you've been struggling," said the attending. "There are options we can talk about. Therapy, medication." "No, I don't want medication," Miss Marshall interrupted. Her response was firm and immediate, and I could see the attending's head tilt in concern. "Can I ask why?" "I read on Facebook that it makes you crazy," Miss Marshall said. Her hands started to tremble in her lap, and I watched the attending reach over to gently hold them in her own. "And changes your personality, and I don't want all that. I don't want to mess with anything. I'm not weak. I can handle it. I don't need meds." I watched the attending pause to digest this new direction the conversation had taken, and I could tell this was a delicate moment. It was clear that Miss Marshall trusted her physician enough to disclose personal matters about her mental health, but yet not enough to let the physician's recommendations overtake her belief systems. The path forward hinged on whether or not the attending to acknowledge this new direction, and she did. "Let me ask you something," said the attending. "Do you take medication for your diabetes and your high blood pressure?" Miss Marshall looked bewildered. "Yes, of course." "Do you believe those medications are helping you get better?" "I do." "Did you hesitate to start medication for those issues?" Miss Marshall was silent, as if she began to understand where this was going. "No, I suppose I didn't hesitate." "Then why," asked the attending, "should your mental health be any different? Why should you treat it less urgently than your diabetes or your high blood pressure?" And what followed was one of the most impactful moments I can remember throughout my whole medical school journey. I can still vividly see Miss Marshall's face in my mind as she registered those words. It was as if a veil had physically lifted and understanding dawned on her face. She began to cry. "You're right," she whispered. "I don't know why I thought that. Meds won't make me weak, and I need help." In this single encounter, the attending was able to combat not only misinformation, but stigma as well. To me, this represents the importance of shared decision-making as a tool for addressing misinformation and strengthening trust. It's important that clinicians present multiple options to patients in order to elicit their preferences as well as their hesitations. Sometimes this can be as simple as reframing patients' priorities, such as, "Is anxiety any different than hypertension to you as a medical concern?" Or even digging deeper into patients' views to create space for education, such as, "What is your understanding of what antidepressants do to the body?" It was heartwarming to think that not only did Miss Marshall choose to receive care for an important issue, but she may eventually correct someone else in her life who once shared her former perspectives. So to go back to my earlier point, when someone asks me, "What would you prioritize?" I think my own answer would be, I want to prioritize where the patient leads me. Because letting a patient rant for a few minutes about how they struggled to make the bus to their appointment can help their doctor realize that, hey, maybe the physical therapy center 10 miles away really isn't the best option for their rehab. Clinicians should listen to what patients say and don't say. Observe their patellar reflex, sure, but also other reflexes that have been conditioned by stigma. Clinicians can unknowingly contribute to the spread of misinformation by not allowing space to have these critical discussions with patients, by keeping treatment options non-negotiable and rigid, and by choosing not to explore patients' inner lives and what helps them make decisions. A patient's anger or indignance is not necessarily an invitation to close the conversation, but to probe deeper, gently, with purpose, and help guide them to a healthier point of view if need be. With each conversation, not only will trust hopefully grow, but so will patient empowerment, which is a win for everybody.